Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us. Now, all the way from our Abuja studio this morning to analyze top news headlines over the course of the week is Dr. Biodun Adeniyi. Welcome to the morning show. It's good to have you. Okay, let's begin with, that major one that happened in the course of the week, the news that coronavirus had made its way to Nigeria.
Yes.
How did you receive that? And are you as confident as the WHO that Nigeria really can handle this the way it did with Ebola in 2014?
Yeah, very well. Thanks for having me on this morning. And once again, a pleasure being here. I think it's just okay to be very optimistic because we've had what we can call a requisite experience in the past. And beyond that, we had nearly 2 months to prepare for it. The disease broke out towards the end of last year, and we were all aware of how it was moving from one part of the world to the other. So it was just a matter of time before it will arrive in Nigeria. And over the weekend, it indeed arrived. So it's going to be a shame if we cannot handle it as it were, because expectations were high, that we would have prepared for it. And of course, our officials give us all the confidence that they were very ready for it. We had many pronouncements. They raised our expectations. And I'm sure that they should be able to live up to the challenge. We're in a very closed world where people meet, mix, and mingle. And we saw it coming. We were somewhat prepared for it with the pronouncements of our leaders, and I think it's something we should be able to handle. And with the report so far on how contact cases have been quarantined, with the report again of how some 3 persons were quickly quarantined in Plateau, you begin to feel that, government is indeed very ready and acting as swiftly as they could. And again, some governors have also told us how prepared they are, how emergency wards are being prepared ahead of possible cases. So there's no way we can probably dispute the confidence of the WHO. And I think I want to share in that confidence, believing that we had a track experience of dealing with such emergency disease like we did with Ebola. And if we could do with Ebola, I'm sure we should also be able to leverage on that previous experience to arrest this one as well. Ngozi.
Well, Dr. Adeniyi, I think we all share in the feeling of confidence, especially after speaking to the Commissioner for Health yesterday. But in addition to that, we know that there's been lots of fake news coming out surrounding coronavirus. There was news about falsely identifying the driver of patient 0, and then there was news, as you mentioned, about 3 Chinese nationals being quarantined in Plateau State, even though it turns out that we've heard that they've tested negative for that. How do you think rumors and fake news have made this issue worse?
Yes, Femi, we cannot deny the fact of fake news in our new world, a new world of flux in communication. And the panacea has always been that, we should ratchet up a new sense of discernment. To be able to separate the wheat from the chaff is something that has become a fact of the revolution in communications technology. So what we need to do is not necessarily to deny that closet nymphomaniacs, closet psychopaths will not take advantage of the new freedom, the new liberation they have with a mere ownership of the handsets, of the smartphone, to wreak havoc and to cause confusion. These things will continue, but we need a lot of media literacy, media education to be able to reconscientize our people, viewers, the audience, on how to discern between what is real and what is unreal. So that fact is going to continue. I'm not afraid of that, but I think there's also a philosophical aspect of it that no matter how you look at it, truth will always prevail over falsehood.
Indeed. And Dr. Adeniyi, let's go a little bit further afield to Italy now, where the very first case of an Italian-Nigerian has been discovered. And that is, of course, the Italian-Nigerian footballer who was 22 years of age, Paul Akpan Udo. Now, we were talking yesterday with the Commissioner for Health about the fact that we have not yet discovered one fully melanated case. Why do you believe that is?
Well, if I had it right, Keturah, our health infrastructures are still very problematic, where our facilities, our amenities are still in fits and starts, and efficiency and productivity are still lacking in many of the things that we're supposed to do ordinarily very well. So I think that we can see this deficiency, we can see this lack within this broader picture of inefficiency in public facilities and amenities. And I think all we can do in the circumstances is just to be optimistic. If we're optimistic, we feel a sense of optimism that the little resources that we have will be used to the optimum to achieve as much as possible, to meet as much as possible some of our expectations on improving many of these health facilities. There are concerns, rightly, that the breakout of coronavirus in Nigeria, that the arrival of coronavirus in Nigeria is a test, sort of, on Nigerian health facilities. And the challenge will be that, yes, our health facilities are not necessarily at the optimum. We just hope that even the marginal, minimal state that it is, will be more than enough to deal with, the virus, as it were. And of course, like I said, hopes are high. We'll only have to be optimistic in the circumstance, Keturah.
And optimism will not hurt anyone in this situation. Now, let's move on to other issues. Security challenges in the country have continued to, unabated, more or less. Let's talk about the Boko Haram's change of strategy, which the Information Minister, Lai Mohammed, says is an attempt by the Boko Haram to actually divide Nigeria across religious lines. I wonder what you have to say about that. But let's see, we have a short, report on that, and then we'll come back and get your reaction.
The insurgents who delude themselves as Muslims, whereas they are nothing more than bloodthirsty, rapacious killers who subscribe to no religion, have recently started targeting Christians with a view to sowing the seed of confusion and discord between the two great religions. This is not to say that they have stopped attacking Muslims, but they seem to now have a deliberate policy of attacking Christians. Some have misinterpreted this to insinuate a systematic campaign to persecute Christians in Nigeria. This is absurd and very unfair to the men and women who are daily battling insurgents. These men and women are both Christians and Muslims. The truth is that, having run out of options in their battle against Nigeria, the insurgents are desperate to stay relevant, to stay in the news, hence their cowardly and senseless strategy targeting Christians as part of their increasing resort to the use of guerrilla tactics. We want to therefore appeal to religious leaders, both Christians and Muslims, not to fall for this desperate move by the insurgents. We appeal to them not to allow them to divide us as a people and weaken our resolve to deal decisively with the insurgents.
All right, Dr. Biodun, I'm sure you listened very carefully to what Lai Mohammed had to say, the information minister. Initially, government stance was that activities of Boko Haram were just mere kicks of a dying horse, and now the language seems to have changed somewhat, that this is a deliberate strategy by the Boko Haram to divide Nigeria along religious lines. I mean, I wonder what your thoughts are concerning this.
Yeah, very well, Ngozi. I think the minister made what I can call a very responsible statement, to raise an alarm on what could be the tactics of some set of nihilists. We need to remember that the war between us and Boko Haram is not just a physical, symmetrical war. It's an ideological war based on die-hearted indoctrination. We're talking about people who believe in the apocalypse, in eschatology, and that's often the most difficult kind of war to really fight anywhere in the world. We just saw what happened between the United States and America. After nearly 2 decades, they had to just go around the table. And that's why people have also said that perhaps we should just negotiate with Boko Haram so that we'll come to a common understanding. But we also know that insurgents, terrorists are people who are prone to different tactics.
Dr. Adeniyi, unfortunately, we do have to go to a quick break, but we will be coming right back to you after the break. Stay with us.
Right, we still have Dr. Biodun Adeniyi speaking to us about the different issues concerning the nation in the course of the week. And you were trying to make a point about the government's stance, saying that Boko Haram's attacks are an attempt to divide Nigeria across religious lines. We'll allow you to land on that point, yes.
Yeah. That's right. Thanks, Ngozi. I was actually saying that it's a very difficult fight that we are in with these people because they are indoctrinated, they believe in the apocalypse, so that fixation, is actually problematic to deal with, and which is why people have talked about political solution. And they're also very deft, very creative in terms of strategy. They keep changing strategies as much as they keep changing location. And that's why you will see that, our military forces, our Nigerian military might, has found some of their leaders impregnable. You'll be wondering that after so many years, some of them are still around, because they keep changing locations, they keep changing tactics and strategy. And you cannot take anything away from people like that. So for government to come out and call and warn us ahead of possible renewal of their strategy in another dimension, I think is okay, because Nigeria is a very fragile nation. Our differences are very tepid, and much else. So the responsible thing for government to do is just to sensitize the populace to possibilities of these people coming out and playing one fault line against the other, because this fragility, this sensitivity is often played upon by mischief makers. And I think to that extent, it's okay for us to be aware, for people to be prepared. Boko Haram has over the years moved from capturing territories to using suicide bombing, and now to ambushing of soldiers. You do not know the next step that they will resort to. So we need to continue to be on guard, to be dynamic and in our thought, and to probably think ahead of them so that we can forestall any strategy they might probably come up with. And at some point, we just pray that they will come to an understanding and know that what they are just doing is just wasting lives, wasting properties, wasting futures, and wasting destinies. Perhaps that understanding is what they need, really. But how do we come about that understanding beyond the physical, symmetrical aspect of the war? I think it comes through not just long-term education, but also short-term education. We can only, once again, be optimistic that we can find a way around these things so that we can be at peace as a nation, Ngozi.
Yeah.
Dr. Adeniyi, you mentioned there that Boko Haram continue to change their tactics and their strategy. Naturally, yeah. I guess any armed group would be doing the same when they're trying to evade arrest and capture. If we were to go back to the top line of this story, which is the fact that Boko Haram are now targeting Christians in addition to Muslims with their attacks, we know that there's been the death of Lawan and Dimi, who is of the Christian Association of Nigeria. In addition to that, we know another Christian student at the University of Maiduguri has lost their life as a result of these targeted attacks. What do you think has preempted this change in strategy where they're targeting Christians. Do you think that that's a result of the military making gains against Boko Haram?
Femi, let me tell you, in warfare, there are so many dimensions to it. There's a physical aspect and a psychological aspect of it. Boko Haram is not unaware of all these multiple strategies, and I do not expect the Nigerian government to understand less some of these dimensions as well, and that's what I think is actually playing out. And I've made the point that Nigeria is a multi-ethnic, multicultural society. Our understandings are disparate and differentiated. Because of that, there's this fragility, and we are still struggling really to bring about tolerance, a common understanding, a kind of communion, much unlike what has manifested in some other countries that as well plural, like Nigeria. But our own plurality is still very difficult to manage, and we are still urging our leaders to be mindful of these differences and manage it very well. But any mischief maker, whether Boko Haram, whether politician, whether economic or cultural leader, can actually play on these differences, because it's a very fragile one, and it's even worsened by the fact of the absence of understanding. I don't want to say illiteracy or poor education, but the absence of understanding has made this very worse, such that humans, because of deprivation, because of long years of immiseration, can actually act like robots. Just give them one command, one little motivation, one little encouragement, one little handout, and they will go out causing havoc. So on the part of Boko Haram, I do not think that they are ignorant of this downside, and they might want to cash in on it. So it's okay, really, for government to come and warn against it, just in case they might move that route.
Dr. Adeniyi, thank you very much for your thoughts so far. Now, with regards to Boko Haram targeting Nigeria along religious lines, or attempting to separate Nigeria along religious lines, rather, the Archbishop of the South Pentecostal Church in Nigeria, Archbishop Julius Adiwe, has stated that Nigerians will actually have a cause to celebrate the destruction of Boko Haram very, very soon. Do you agree with this statement?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks, Ketura. I think that's the kind of statement we'll probably expect from some of our leaders, because we are definitely in crisis. And you and I are not, there's nobody that has that sense of security, because once you live within this geography, and you hear about some kind of killing or arrest anywhere, you become disoriented, if not distressed and depressed. So the thing we need from our leaders, whether political, religious, or something, is to give us a sense of hope. And there's something about psychology, really. If you feel we have hope that as soon as it is possible, this unrest will be over, of course, it will galvanize the populace and even the fighting forces at the level of therapy. And of course, it's going to be a kind of damage, to do further damage to the psychology of the Boko Haram fighters themselves, because they too, beyond the physical, they also need they need their own evil kind of encouragement, which they derive from different sources. But if we, the people on the other side, do not make them feel important, and that's what I think government is also always saying, that what they are doing is the last kick of the dying horse. It's not necessarily physical, but it's just to do a psychological damage to them. So this war, like I said earlier, is being fought at different fronts, and it is gratifying to see some of our leaders, religious, political, and all of that, rallying around the military and giving us hope that very shortly it will soon be a thing of the past. Ketura.
Okay, and well, hopefully the Boko Haram members, hopefully, as the Nigerian government is beginning to believe now that a lot of them are actually repentant, with the issue of 25 or so Boko Haram members coming back from Niger. It raises a very serious question as to how really repentant. I mean, can you guarantee that these people truly are repentant in such a way that they can be rehabilitated and brought back into society? You have a bill, before the Senate that has raised a lot of arguments too as to whether it really should be the case, as in rehabilitating these Boko Haram members, or they should really be treated as criminals. And then again, if you look at that US-Taliban peace deal, it means that truly you can actually, the federal government can actually have a peace deal with terrorists. What's your take on this?
Ngozi, it's a difficult thing, really very tricky, and sometimes you also want to sympathize with the authorities, because we need to remember Nigeria subscribes to conventions, to processes and procedures on war situations, and to that extent, even in warfare, you are supposed to be fair to some extent. Even in warfare, you are supposed to be a respecter of human rights. Even in warfare, you are supposed to feel a sense of humanness. You are supposed to be respectful of the destinies of people. It's a very painful kind of development. Sometimes very touchy. You'll be wondering that people that you should just take away, even extrajudicially. You are being made to countenance them, to defer to them, to show them some level of respect. You want to feel that they do not deserve any respect. But what we're being told in conventions is that you need to show greater grace even to an enemy. And of course, this thing to some extent is spiritual as well. It's not just biblical, but it's also Quranic. You need to show greater grace to your enemy. And yes, these people are enemies, but they said they are repenting. They have repented. So government needs to walk the tightrope between not breaching their human rights and between the provision of sanction for them, so that they will not resort to criminality again. So it's a tightrope that government will always have to walk. But the deficiency, the downside I see in all of these is that there have been too less of communication on the part of government. They've been explaining too less and leaving the space for citizens who rightly feel uncomfortable with this quick pardoning of these set of people. And of course, we know these people have very difficult sense of understanding. So if you pardon them, what's the guarantee that they will not go back to the bush, to start
That's the question.
Killing and maiming? And for the law, for the proposed law in the National Assembly, I'm not afraid of it. I won't break bones about it, because it's just a private member bill, and private member bills are just what they are. They'll come, first reading, second reading probably. Third reading, you cannot be too sure, and there's always need for a conference at the end of the day. So it's like an individual legislator expressing his own opinion. And of course, we have all right. We all have right to express our opinion, which is legitimate. It's an inalienable right, and we do not think anybody should be denied that right, whether or not they are legislators. And our ability to tolerate this kind of opinion also speak well to how in the future we'll be able to manage differences. Differences is a very powerful, problematic process, but tolerance is our ability to accept or to tolerate whatever the other person's opinion is, no matter how seemingly irritating it can be, but you just need to tolerate. And that's what we need on our part against the proposal from the National Assembly, Ngozi, Ketura, and Femi.
Well, thank you very much. I just have a quick question. I know we're edging towards our break. Perhaps we'll give you the space to answer after the break. But I do want to further Ngozi's point about the rehabilitating militants back into society. If we look at the example of Shamima Begum in the United Kingdom, we know that the UK government has chosen not to take her back and have in effect rendered her stateless against international law because they feel the risk is too high. Do you think the Nigerian government are being too naive in just allowing these people to return to the country and taking them at their word? Well, we will take your thoughts to that question after the break. Dr. Biodun Adeniyi. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Well, welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Before we went to the break there, we were talking to Dr. Biodun Adeniyi there in Abuja about the rehabilitation of militants back into Nigerian society. Before we went to the break there, Dr. Biodun, I talked about perhaps there being some type of naivete on the side of the federal government in welcoming these people back at their word. And I used the example of British national Shamima Begum, who left the country to go to Syria via Turkey without any permission, and has since said that she has repented and wants to be returned back to United Kingdom. They have revoked her citizenship, rendering her stateless under international law. And I wonder if you think that that's something the Nigerian government would also do when it comes to rehabilitating people who have left the country to commit similar crimes back to Nigeria.
Well, I think all options are actually open. In management of any kind of crisis, we cannot foreclose or we cannot close the door to any option, really. So I want to think that as we are progressing in the administration of this crisis, government will keep reviewing and reflecting on situations and come up with some specifics, But in the circumstance, do not forget that I said earlier that we are dealing with a very tricky situation. At a time in this country, we wanted to buy arms from the West. The United States invoked the Lely Law to deny us of those because, of the claim that would violate some human rights. And of course, we're in a nation participating in the global changes. We know with Amnesty International very present in Nigeria, and now often and again they keep challenging the Nigerian army on violation of human rights. So what the army as an institution, you can see every other day, they are trying to prove to the world, particularly Amnesty International and other watchers of human rights, that irrespective of the crisis situation, they are mindful of the rights of the enemies. Yes, they are trying to destroy them, but they are still mindful of their rights. So it's just this thing about, pandering to the expectations of those who feel that you should still be fair in warfare. But to the specifics, again, like I said, we cannot foreclose anything. State matters requires operators, to show greater grace in situation, and grace is endless. Showing grace to an enemy can actually be very painful, very irritating, can be very disgusting to the ordinary watcher, to the non-initiated observer. But of course, overall, you will now see that perhaps that's what humanity needs, because we cannot allow people who are depraved, who are absolutely somewhat nihilistic, to bring us down to their level. So we need to show that we have a higher level of understanding than they are, painful as this may be, so that the society can move forward and there will be peace and tranquility at the end of the day, Femi.
Absolutely. All good points, fair points, well made, Dr. Adeniyi. But one wonders if when the Nigerian Senator Ibrahim Gaida made this decree or sought to get the backing of his other senators, he actually knew that he would be provoking the hornet's nest. Because let's take a look at some of these disastrous figures that have happened since 2012. We're looking at the insurgents killing over 6,600 people in 2014 alone. Of course, the kidnapping of the 276 schoolgirls in Chibok. The records show that 2.3 million people have been displaced by the conflict since May 2013. The former governor, Kashim Shettima of Borno, said Boko Haram insurgency had led to deaths of almost 100,000 people, going by estimates in the community over the years. We're looking at destruction of the totals almost 2 trillion naira in the Nigerian north. Why are we so, as Femi said, as Ngozi has also rightly said, why are we so quick to forgive people who seemingly want to cause this destruction, the depraved individuals, as you so rightly put it, with no retribution in sight?
Thank you very much, Ketura. I heard you very clearly, and I feel the pain that is coming with that question, actually. But again, if you see the discussion, despite all their destruction, the last governor of Borno State before the present one, is it Hashim Shettima or something, has actually said at a time, and you just been wondering why he was making that kind of statement. He was making an inaugural speech or a kind of speech, I can't remember specifically now, and he said what government should do is just to forgive them, let there be an amnesty, forgive them and let them come out of the bush so that we can have peace. I don't think there's any amount of money that is too much. There's any price of money that is too high for us to pay for peace. We saw all the havoc, that was wrought, in the Second World War. we saw the destruction of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and thereafter we saw how Japan rose. We saw again how Germany rose again. You know, the victorious West didn't really say because of the cost of war that Japan made them to pay. Because of that, because of the pain they inflicted on them, that provoked the dropping of atomic bomb in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Because of that, they would not accept Japan, that they would not integrate Japan into the world. It was a very painful thing. Lots of lives were lost. Monies were, of course, cost was very high on the part of the West. But of course, Japan became integrated. At the end of the day, they became one of the most prosperous nations on planet Earth. And in terms of economic prosperity, you cannot count the first 10 nations in the world without bringing in Japan. You know, so, but that's about it. That's actually what forgiving is about. That's what forgiving, bringing people to an understanding is all about. And again, we also have a fault, really, in the production of Boko Haram. You know, let's not just externalize these things and say it's their fault. The society also has a fault. And I mean, when I say society, it includes all of us. Because if the society has been responsive enough at the level of education, at the level of literacy, at the level of economy, you know, I do not see people who would think that, you know, the life they are living is meaningless, you know, so they are ready to go anytime. One of the ultimate things that every human being, ultimate desire of every human being is to live life for as long as possible. And if you see somebody who is ready to take it just about any time, you should know there's a high level of deprivation reigning somewhere. And what will have produced that kind of deprivation is actually partly social upheavals, you know, social tension and compression, which we cannot completely exonerate ourselves from. So while we have a fault, we need to also understand that we also have a higher responsibility in rehabilitating them. But again, in rehabilitating them, it should not be at the expense of the feelings of Nigerians who are having some revulsion and who are contemptuous of these actions. So what government needs to do, again, is to communicate more, provide some more explanation so that we can all be on the same page at the end of the day. Ketura, Femi, and Ngozi.
All right, thank you so much for that. Well, those arguing against any idea of rehabilitating Boko Haram, they've been asking the question, what happens to the millions of victims, just like Ketura has very, very clearly stated there. But let's go to that Supreme Court fine of the lawyers to the APC candidate for the Bayelsa governorship. Yeah. Yes, now that... A lot of people are saying that the judiciary actually has saved itself with, you know, this unprecedented historic move by fining the lawyers, Afe Babalola and, you know, the other lawyer, up to 60 million naira. Do you think the judiciary has, you know, shown itself to be above board and even saved Nigeria's democracy, rule of law, and more fundamentally, the Nigerian constitution by that move?
Well, thank you very much, Ngozi. I think, you know, senior lawyers, legends of the Nigerian law, legends of the profession, you know, are also not infallible. They are also human, you know, and they were told so by learned justices of the Supreme Court the other day through those fines. And I think they have also taken that fine. They have been very philosophic about it. They do not have any option other than to go ahead and pay the fine. But we need to also see that there's a problem with our electioneering process. You know, we are now having an electioneering process that cannot be concluded at the ballot. You know, it has to be concluded through the courts, and specifically maybe at the Supreme Court. This is not the right way to go. You know, the wishes of the people are being torpedoed, rightly or wrongly, on the altar of technicality. I agree, again, that the courts are actually the courts of justice, but there's a difference between being the court of justice and being the court of truth. The learned justices going forward will be expected to be able to marry justice with truth, because it's not enough. We know that justice functions mainly on the basis of technicality, but again, maybe to grow our judiciary or to grow the entire process, we must find a way of marrying or integrating truth into the process of searching for justice, because sometimes we find some of these things being like a reversal of logic, turning logic on its head, where I don't want to sound like a politician now, where you just see somebody who probably came last coming first on account of technicality. Very difficult to understand, but I don't know. I don't know as much as the learned justices know. All we can only do as observers is to plead with them in the future to ensure that their justices tally a little bit with common sense or common understanding, or what I earlier called truth, so that our respect.
But a lot of people, if I can quickly jump in, a lot of people,
waver, really.
Yes, a lot of people believe that, with this Supreme Court, judgment, if you like, or decision finding these lawyers, it could actually put paid to a situation where you have the courts deciding the outcome of elections instead of the ballot box.
No, that's because I disagree with you, I'm afraid, because that's not going to be the essence of democracy. A democracy is supposed to draw legitimacy, is just to empower leaders, drawing legitimacy from the people. And if we have a few justices deciding it for us, I think it will negate the spirit of democracy. Democracy is about involvement, it's about inclusion, it's about participation, and participation, inclusion, and involvement is expressed through the ballot. Once the ballot is the king, really, through as moderated by the umpire that INEC is. So, but once the ballot decisions are made, I think that should be the final. The fact that we're not able to conclude that process, means that there are lots of improvement we still need to do at the level of politics. But I think the Supreme Court actually deserves its own commendation.
Dr. Adeniyi, unfortunately, once more we have to cut you short. We could talk to you all day long, as you know.